least 25 governors have issued orders requiring some level of public face covering. Senator John Marty proposes that Minnesota adopt a statewide requirement to wear masks in an effort to stifle the spread of COVID-19.
Minnesota is not currently experiencing the resurgence of the coronavirus as other parts of the country are, and Governor Walz is reportedly mulling a statewide mandate right now. You have a bill that would make mask wearing the law of the land. Why is that?
Sure. First of all, I'm very pleased the governor's considering the idea of a statewide mask ban, and I would encourage him to do so. I'm introducing this legislation because during the special session, we've been hearing from the Senate majority saying, oh, the governor's doing all these things unilaterally. These are decisions the legislature should make. So I'm saying if they want the legislature to make the decision, I'll introduce a bill. I'd love to have hearings. Have the epidemiologists, have the public health experts come in and talk about how this is so important. And frankly, for business opening, this is the most pro-business thing we could do in Minnesota right now. Texas and Florida and other states that opened up and didn't have mask requirements, they're shutting down again. That's a devastating double hit to businesses. Once we're getting our businesses opened up again, the best thing we can do is keep the rate of COVID expansion down so they can keep open. So I'm introducing it partly because a lot of my Republican colleagues have been saying the legislature ought to be making these decisions. So I'm saying, give us a chance, let's try it.
So there appears to be a partisan divide on the importance of masking, and I've read a number of posts now on social media that are saying that a mask mandate impinges on personal freedom. How do you respond?
Okay, it's a responsibility. We have lots of things we have to do in society. You have to follow red lights. You have to pay taxes. You have lots of responsibilities as citizens to take care of each other in a way that works. If we didn't follow stoplights, then you'd have I have the freedom to drive when I want, where I want, what speed I want, and so on. Yeah, then you have lots of dead people around because people crash into each other with no laws. And so we do have laws that people comply with. And the way I'd focus on this is, first of all, look at the difference of what the burden is. I use the illustration of World War II. We had all kinds of very serious rationing things. Talk to people who were alive in those days. Rationing of gasoline, of rubber, of food supplies, and so on. Those were huge sacrifices. We're asking for a tiny sacrifice that people put a mask over their face when they're out in public to help prevent the spread of disease.
Well, and that was my next question, because in the statement that was released in announcing this legislation you're proposing, you quoted World War II and the sacrifices that people made in order, for the greater good. So why is it different now? What's different about America now that people don't view the collective good as better?
Right. Well, among other things, first of all, we should not be thinking of this as a huge sacrifice. But in World War II, it's not like everybody loved rationing. They didn't like rationing. They didn't love restrictions on how much gasoline they could have, how much food they could buy. They didn't like those restrictions, but they lived with them because they realized it was for the common good. They recognized we're all in this together. And so I would say there's a lot of the same thing. People are going to grumble no matter what we do. We expect the grumbling. It's going to happen. But most people do comply with the law. I think the reality is any community that's put in, the local governments that have put in mask wearing mandates, it's been helpful. And I think a lot of business owners say it really helps so that they're not the ones who have to tell people, we've got a policy against this. They can say, the law says that, so we have the law behind us. So I think what we have to recognize, there will be complainers. There will be some people who refuse to comply. And hey, if we get 90% of the public wearing masks and following the law, that's real progress. And that will slow down the onset of the spread of the disease.
Children under the age of 8 and those with underlying medical conditions that would make wearing a mask challenging for breath are exempt from the proposed law. That said, the bill's only repercussion is that not wearing a mask, that businesses can refuse service to those refusing to wear a mask. Is that enough? Does this bill need more teeth?
Okay, first of all, I would say, no, it shouldn't need more teeth because people tend to follow the law because it's the law. If people are told they're not allowed to do something, most people comply. Not everyone, but most people do. And that alone is huge progress. In terms of the penalties under Minnesota law, if we create a new law and doesn't specify the penalties, it counts as a petty misdemeanor. You can't lock anybody up. You can't do anything like that. But you can give them, I think the current fine is $100 maximum. And the whole point of this isn't to have mask patrols out there, to have masked police or something like that. No, the goal here is to have people comply. And I think the reality is most people will comply. And there was a study out of the University of Washington Institute for Health Metrics that said if 95% of Americans would wear masks when they're out in public, either indoor public spaces or outdoors where they can't socially distance, if 95% of Americans would do that, that would reduce the death toll between now and the beginning of November by 45,000 lives. We've had about 130, 140,000 deaths so far in the US. Projections are that by November, under current goal levels, we'll probably have about 210,000 lives. And we cut that death toll significantly by 45,000. That's almost as many people as were killed during the entire Vietnam War. So that's a huge savings of life. This is a small sacrifice we're asking people to make for the benefit of others.
Senator John Marty, thank you.
Thank you. And one last thing, I tell people refusal to wear a mask is not a matter of toughness. It's a matter of rudeness. Public health experts routinely say and clearly say that not wearing a mask doesn't hurt you as much as it hurts the people around you. We wear masks to help others. That's what we're doing it for. I hope we can pass the law, or I hope the governor will make it happen on his own.
Thank you, Senator.